At 3:17 in the morning. I opened that document again. The cursor blinked beneath the title. Like an eye so patient it was almost cruel. Outside the window. The city had gone completely quiet. Even the occasional sound of cars passing on the distant overpass had become sparse and far away. Only one desk lamp was on in the study. Its warm yellow light was gathered by the shade into a single beam, falling across the keyboard and my fingers. Due to personal reasons, I hereby apply to resign from the position of vice president of the company. I had been typing those words for 3 months. For 3 months. I wrote them, deleted them, wrote them again, then deleted them again, like some obsessive ritual of repeated confirmation. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit in this exact spot, turn the screen brightness down to the lowest setting, read the sentence word by word, then close the document, go to the refrigerator for a glass of water, and return to the bedroom. Vivian Lane slept deeply. She always slept deeply. Like an island stripped of all sensation. Sometimes her phone screen would suddenly light up. It was either a message from a work group or a report from her assistant. I would turn my head and judge from the rhythm of her lashes and breathing whether she was truly asleep. When she was really asleep, her breathing was shallow, and her lips parted slightly. When she was pretending, her lashes trembled faintly, like the final struggle of a butterfly before it was pinned inside a specimen box. Over these 3 years, I had learned how to tell the difference. Tonight, she was truly asleep. Her phone lit up again. The light from the screen reflected onto the ceiling like a small drifting piece of moonlight. I turned my head and glanced at it. Mr. Vale says he wants to transfer to the marketing department next week. What position do you think would be appropriate? It was from her assistant, Kelly Ward. Sent at 2:51 a.m. Kelly sending work messages at this hour meant Jason Vale was still busy at this hour too. Busy with what? I did not want to know. I stared at that line for a few seconds. Then I saw typing appear at the top of the screen. The bubble with 3 little dots appeared and disappeared. Disappeared and appeared again. 3 times. As if someone had typed something, deleted it, typed something else, and deleted it again. In the end, nothing was sent. The phone screen went dark. Vivian did not wake up. In her sleep, she turned over and faced the other side, leaving me with the back of her head and a section of bare neck. Her hair was scattered across the pillow. It was deep brown with a few chestnut highlights. Done last month at Salon Realm for $400. When she came home, she asked me if it looked good. I said yes. She hummed and looked down at her phone. Jason had posted a photo at the gym on social media, and she liked it. I pulled my gaze back and returned it to the screen. The cursor was still blinking. I pressed save. Document saved successfully. Then I opened the drawer on my right and took out a stack of printing paper. I had prepared it long ago. A 480 grams. I did not use company paper. I had bought it myself from a stationery store. The printer in the corner of the study buzzed for more than 10 seconds. Then the resignation letter slowly slid out, carrying a little residual warmth. I picked up a pen. It was a black 0.5 mm gel pen from a supermarket. $2 a piece. My name. Miles Morgan. I had written it for more than 30 years. But the last stroke of this signature was especially long. As if I wanted to leave something on the paper. Or completely cut something off. After signing, I stood up and placed the resignation letter flat on the dining table. The table was black sintered stone. Chosen by Vivian. She said it was stain resistant. Her coffee cup was always placed on the right side near the wall. A white bone china cup with a gold rim. A faint coffee stain circled the bottom. Impossible to wash away. I pressed the resignation letter under that cup, leaving one corner exposed to make sure she would see it the moment she lifted the cup. After doing all of that, I returned to the bedroom and lay down. The mattress sank slightly. Vivian mumbled something in her sleep. I could not make it out. Her phone screen lit up again. This time a WhatsApp message banner popped up. I did not turn my head to look. I closed my eyes and listened to my own heartbeat. One beat after another. Steady as a calibrated metronome. Mr. Vale says he wants to transfer to the marketing department next week. What position do you think would be appropriate? Jason Vale wanted to go to marketing. Marketing was my direct army. They had followed me for 4 years. From top to bottom. Not a single person there had not been brought up by me from the front lines. Jason going to marketing was like putting a cat into a tank full of goldfish. He wanted to eat the fish. Vivian wanted him to eat the fish. But they probably did not know that those goldfish were raised by me. Every scale had been polished by my own hand. I turned over and pulled the blanket up to my chin. The air conditioner hummed. Vivian had set it to 68 degrees because she said 68 helps you sleep. I did not know whether 64 or 68 was better for sleeping. But I knew I definitely would not sleep tonight. I lay there until 5 in the morning. Heard the first garbage truck pass outside. Then slowly sat up. Vivian was still asleep. Her phone screen was off. I did not know whether Kelly had ever received that red notification. I washed up, changed clothes, and made a simple breakfast. 2 slices of whole wheat bread toasted slightly dark, 1 fried egg, and 1 cup of black coffee. Vivian's coffee machine was a fully automatic DeLonghi. Every day at exactly 7. She would come downstairs, press 1 button, wait 20 seconds, and take her first sip. The whole process was as precise as a ritual. I finished my own breakfast, washed the plate, and placed it back on the drying rack. Then I picked up my phone and looked at the company OA system. 6:58 a.m. I walked to the dining table and looked down at that resignation letter. It lay quietly on the black surface like a sentence being pronounced. I reached out, wanting to take it back and read it once more. But the moment my fingertip touched the paper, I pulled my hand away. I opened the door and left. In the elevator, I ran into Mrs. Walker from across the hall. She was returning from walking her dog. The golden retriever sniffed around at her feet. Mrs. Walker was a full-time housewife in her early 40s. Her husband was an import-export and was away most of the year. She was well informed. There was no movement in the entire building she did not know about. Mr. Morgan. Heading out so early. She tightened the dog leash and smiled at me. Where's Vivian? Still asleep. She'll get up later. Of course. Career women stay up late. Oh. Did you see that Mr. Vale from your wife's company trending yesterday? Trending. That finance forum thing. He took photos with a bunch of big shots and stood right in the center. Your wife's company stock seems to have risen again lately. Is that so? I smiled. Let me tell you. Mrs. Walker leaned closer and lowered her voice. That Mr. Vale does look sharp. But I'll be honest. Don't take it the wrong way. Standing beside your wife. Something just feels off. Look at you. Such a steady man. Him. All flashy and showy. Your wife is probably just temporarily. Mrs. Walker. I interrupted her. The elevator is here. The elevator doors opened. I walked in and pressed the first floor. Mrs. Walker stood outside. Her mouth opening and closing. The golden retriever wagged its tail at me. Before the doors closed, I heard her mutter. Did I say something wrong? The first floor lobby was quiet. The property security guard was yawning. When he saw me, he nodded. I pushed open the glass door and walked outside. The sky was already light. Though the sun had not fully risen. A thin layer of rose-gray stretched along the horizon. There were few people on the street. Only a few sanitation workers in orange uniforms were sweeping fallen leaves. I sat for a while on a bench by the road. My phone remained quiet. The contact icon labeled Vivian Lane did not show a single red number. 7 o'clock. From a distance, I looked at the windows of our building. 16th floor. South-facing side. The kitchen light turned on briefly. Then went off. She was awake. I continued sitting. At 7:08, my phone vibrated. The company OA system pushed a notification. I opened it. The interface displayed one line in the default system font. Your resignation application has been approved. Wishing you a bright future. Approver, Vivian Lane. Timestamp, 7:07 a.m. From the moment she saw the resignation letter to the moment she pressed approve. 7 minutes had passed. Maybe she drank that cup of coffee first. Washed it. Placed it upside down on the drying rack. Then picked up the printed pages and gave them a glance. Maybe she did not even see the third page. Maybe she only saw the words personal reasons. Logged into the OA system. And clicked approve. I had no way of knowing which it was. But I knew one thing. From the moment she picked up the coffee cup to the moment she approved the resignation, less than 8 minutes had passed. 8 minutes. 3 years of marriage. 2 years of Cold War. 3 months of struggling over this resignation letter. Written off in one stroke. I locked my phone. Stood. Put both hands into my coat pockets. And walked along the sidewalk toward the subway station. The wind blew from behind me. It was a little cold. After walking a dozen steps, I stopped and looked back at the building. The curtains on the 16th floor were open. She should have been standing by the window. But I could not see her. The distance was too far. All I saw was that one window reflecting the morning sunlight. Dazzling enough to sting. I turned back and kept walking. The empty apartment. I did not go back to the company. According to procedure, a vice president level resignation required in-person handover. HR, finance, legal. Each department had to be visited. Forms had to be signed. Badge, computer, and access card all had to be returned. But Vivian approved it too quickly. So quickly that HR had not even had time to send me the official handover reminder. When I reached the entrance of the subway station, I received an automatically generated system email. The title was, Resignation Process Initiation Notice. The body listed a long series of forms and interviews I needed to complete. I did not plan to complete any of them. I stood in the subway station for a while. The morning rush had not officially begun yet. Only a few people stood scattered on the platform. Some looked down at their phones. Some closed their eyes and dozed. I swiped my card and entered. Randomly boarded a train. Changed lines twice in the city center. And finally got off at a station in the Western District where I had never stopped before. At the exit was a Walmart. Beside it was a row of small storefronts, a noodle shop, a convenience store, a lottery shop. I went into the convenience store, bought a bottle of water, and sat on the steps outside. In my pocket, there was still one key. The key to my own apartment. I had bought it before marriage. A 2-bedroom, 1 living room unit of about 650 square feet. Out beyond the northern edge of the city. Vivian did not like it. She said it was too far. After marriage, we moved into the large flat where she lived now. My apartment had remained empty, except for the occasional visit to check on it. The windows were covered in dust. I decided to move back. After an hour of subway and bus transfers, I arrived at the old neighborhood near 10 o'clock. There was no gated access. An old man dozed in the guard room and did not even lift his eyelids as I passed. Building 6. Unit 3. 5th floor. No elevator. My legs felt a little sore when I climbed up. I really had lacked exercise these past 6 months. When I inserted the key into the lock, it gave a stiff click. The door opened. A smell from long-term lack of ventilation rushed toward me. Dust. Old wood. Faint mildew. And the dry scent of time itself passing. The living room was small. The sofa was still covered with the white cloth from the move. A uniform layer of dust lay on the coffee table. Sunlight entered through windows with curtains never drawn. Dust floated inside the beams. Like slow snow. I stood at the entrance and suddenly felt dazed. When we moved out 3 years ago, Vivian hired movers. In one morning, everything was taken away. I remembered her standing in the middle of the living room, looking around, then saying, "This apartment is too small. There isn't even room for a study." At that time, I had been squatting on the floor packing a box of books. I said nothing. She took my old bookshelf with us and placed it in a small corner at the end of the hallway in our current home. Later, after Jason came, that corner was turned into his tea break area, and the bookshelf was moved into storage. I walked in and placed my backpack on the sofa. The white cloth sank into a soft dent. Then I found a rag, ran some water, and began cleaning. After 3 hours of wiping and scrubbing, the apartment was barely livable. I took out clothes from my backpack. Only 2 sets. One backpack had contained all my personal items from that other place. Everything else. Suits, ties, watches, the birthday gifts Vivian had given me. The anniversary gifts. I took none of them. Those things belonged to Vivian Lane's husband. And at 7:08 this morning, that identity had been deleted by the system. I sat on the clean sofa and opened my phone. The company group chat should have reacted by now. I opened it and took a look. Sure enough, the personnel appointment notice had already been posted. After review by group management, Jason Vale is hereby promoted to General Manager of Group Strategic Development. Salary adjusted to XX/month. Effective immediately. Below it was a sea of congratulations. Mr. Vale emojis. Laughing emojis. Thumbs ups. Flowers. Fireworks. Like a virtual parade of celebration. Jason replied underneath. Thank you. Everyone. Let's work hard together. Then he tagged Vivian. Thank you, boss, for the support. Vivian replied with a clapping emoji. No one mentioned my name. It was as if Miles Morgan had never appeared in this company. The resignation of a vice president and the appointment of a general manager of strategic development were announced on the same day. The former sank silently like a stone into water. The latter was lively as fireworks. I swiped away the group chat and opened my contacts. I began scrolling through names. Under A, the first was Andar Electronics. Mr. Baker. I looked at the name for 2 seconds. Then pressed call. The phone rang 4 times before it was answered. A man's slightly hoarse voice came through. Who is this? Mr. Baker. It's me. Miles Morgan. There was silence for 2 seconds. Mr. Morgan. His voice clearly lifted half a pitch. I heard about your resignation. What the hell is going on? The notice in the group said personal reasons. Yes. Personal reasons. But your client handover. Marketing still hasn't contacted me. No one will contact you. Mr. Baker. Do you remember Section 23? Clause 3 of the framework agreement you signed with us? The other side went silent again. Mr. Baker was a private business owner in his 50s who had started in electronics component distribution. He was sharp. Section 23. He seemed to be flipping through documents. After a while, he said, "You mean the additional clause that says changes to the service team allow renegotiation and termination?" Yes. That clause was added by your company's legal department. At the time, I thought it was quite lenient, giving the client significant unilateral termination rights. Why are you bringing this up now? I added that clause. What? When you signed that contract 3 years ago, I wrote that clause. I added it back then to give myself an option someday. Mr. Baker fell completely quiet. Only his breathing came through, along with what sounded like a distant copy machine buzzing in the office. Miles, he said. His tone changed. The polite probing disappeared, becoming direct and sharp. You're calling me to tell me you're taking those clients with you. Not taking. Offering a choice. What choice? I no longer belong to Lane Group, but my channels are still here. For the same goods, I can get them to you 15% cheaper than Lane Group, with 30 extra days on payment terms. 15%. His voice rose. Are you crazy? What do you even earn? For the first batch. I don't earn anything. I only want the market. He was silent for a long time. Then he laughed. It was the kind of laugh only someone who had done business his whole life could have. Calculating. But not without boldness. You have other resources. Besides the original Lane Group channels. Yes. 3 new lines in Southeast Asia. I started laying groundwork 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Yes. You were preparing to leave 6 months ago. 6 months ago. I wasn't sure whether I would leave. I said. But I left myself options. Mr. Baker. You're a businessman. You understand. He gave a long as if running many things through his head. Then he said. Give me 2 days. I'll have legal look at it. If you're not lying. 15% off. My $600,000 order can be signed next Monday. Good. I'll wait. After hanging up, I stared at the phone screen. Call duration, 3 minutes. 47 seconds. The first order I took away from Lane Group had reached basic intent in 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I did not cheer. I was not excited. I leaned back against the sofa, feeling the rough texture of the old cover against my back. My heartbeat was slightly faster than before. But only slightly. I knew this was just the beginning. My phone still contained 73 core client contacts. 31 of them were Miles Morgan's people. I had built them from scratch. We had eaten late-night meals together, drunk together, survived project deadlines together, and handled delivery crises together. 31. Not one would be missing. I made the second call. Then the third. By the fifth call, my phone died. I searched through my backpack and realized I had not brought a charger. That cable belonged to Vivian. I had not taken it. To be exact, I had taken nothing except my ID, wallet, and 2 sets of clothes. I stood, put on my coat, and went downstairs to the convenience store at the neighborhood entrance. I bought a data cable for $19.99. Then I crouched on the steps outside the convenience store and plugged my phone into a shared power bank. The 6th call went out. Mr. Lewis. It's me. Miles Morgan. Yes. I resigned. I'd like to talk to you about this in person. Tomorrow afternoon. Sure. I'll come by. After hanging up, I stayed crouched there. Passers-by occasionally glanced at me, probably assuming I was a middle-aged man who had lost his job. I lowered my head and looked at my hands. There were old calluses on my knuckles from soldering circuit boards years ago. I had worked 10 years in technology and 3 years in management. What I held in my hands had never been just a title and a salary. What I held was something Vivian and Jason could not see. They only saw Miles Morgan as a person. Quiet. Uncompetitive. Leaving work on time every day. Sometimes reading at home on weekends. They could not see the code and drawings. They could not see the architecture designs I completed alone deep into the night. They could not see the additional clauses hidden at the end of client contracts. All those clauses had been drafted by me. They used Lane Group's legal templates. But the key phrases: change of service personnel may trigger renegotiation and termination. Departure of project lead requires renegotiation of supply agreement. Were embedded word by my own hand. 3 years ago, on my first day at the company, I left myself a way out. At that time, I had not planned to leave. I had just gotten married and thought life would keep getting better. It was merely habit. When working inside a company, I first laid down every safety cushion. That was the instinct of someone in technology. Later, that safety cushion was truly used. When the 7th call went out, my bank balance notification popped up. There were $4.300 left. At our wedding 3 years ago, Vivian said, "What's mine is yours." Jason sat at her family's table, clapping the loudest. I never took it seriously. Never. Keeping enough money to leave at any time was the most basic dignity of an adult. $4.300 was not dignified enough, but it was enough to survive for a while. I stood from the steps, returned the shared power bank, and walked back to the old building without an elevator. The motion sensor lights were broken on 3 floors. I climbed to the 5th floor in darkness, opened the door, and entered. The smell of dust mixed with old wood was still there. I turned on the light, plugged in my phone, then sat on the sofa and opened the Excel ledger. I had started it 3 years ago. I updated it once every week. It recorded the status of every client I handled, contract expiration dates, renewal intentions, competitors' movements. Over 1,000 densely packed rows. I did not need to keep it all in my head. I only needed to know where the data was. I scrolled down and found the appointment notice Lane Group had issued on the day Jason was promoted. I had saved the screenshot. General Manager of Strategic Development. Salary adjusted to XX/month. I dragged that screenshot into another folder. The folder was named, For Records. Then I closed Excel, opened a new blank document, and typed a few words. Phase 1 client list. The cursor waited after the first number. I entered, Mr. Baker. Andar Electronics. That night, I wrote until 2 in the morning and listed 31 names. My phone rang 14 times in total. Not one call came from Vivian. Jason Vale. The dinner when Jason Vale joined the company was paid for by me. Calling it hosted by me was not exactly accurate. The venue was the Cantonese restaurant next to the company. Vivian booked the private room. The menu was also chosen by her. I merely sat in the main seat and paid the bill. That day, she invited every mid-level and above manager from marketing and sales. 2 tables in total. 18 dishes. 4 bottles of wine. Vivian stood to make a toast, holding up her red wine glass. Her face carrying a brilliance I had seen often at company annual meetings but rarely at home. Everyone. Today I'm officially introducing Jason to all of you. From now on, he'll be a member of our Summit family. He's my cousin. He just came back from overseas and previously worked at a consulting firm. He has strong insight into strategy and markets. Please take good care of him. Everyone at the table smiled and applauded. I sat on Vivian's right. The seat on my left had originally been empty, but Vivian had asked Jason to sit on her other side. So between him and me was the distance of Vivian herself. Jason stood. He was tall and slim, wearing a well-cut mist blue suit. His hair was combed without a strand out of place. He bowed to everyone. Everyone. Just call me Jason. I'm here to learn. If there's anything I don't understand, I'll still need everyone's guidance. When he spoke, his voice was clear, his eyes expressive, and the curve of his smile was perfectly measured. Sincere but not lacking restraint. The faces of several female colleagues at the table clearly reddened. A young woman from HR lowered her head and drank half a cup of tea. Jason, you're too modest. Vivian smiled and patted him once. That retail transformation case you did at McKinsey. I've mentioned it several times. That level is enough to teach every project manager in our company. Jason waved his hand. Viv, don't tease me. That was a team effort. I just drew a few pages of PowerPoint. Look at him. Still embarrassed. Laughter filled the table. Director Lewis from marketing joined in. Mr. Vale is young and accomplished. From now on, we have a backbone on the strategic side. Oh. No. Don't call me Mr. Vale. Just call me Jason. Jason. Then please guide us more in the future. I lifted my teacup and took a sip. Pu'er tea. Aged 7 years. It entered smoothly, but left a slight bitterness. My seat was in the middle of the table, directly facing the private room door. Everyone could see me. I could see everyone too. I saw Deputy Director Clark from marketing glance between me and Jason twice, then lower his head to pick up food. I saw a young employee from procurement whisper to the person beside him, voice extremely low, though the mouth shape probably said, "What's his background?" Jason sat back down and turned slightly to talk to Vivian. His voice was neither too loud nor too low, just enough for me to hear. "Viv, when did you change perfumes? This one smells good." "Really? I bought it yesterday." "Tom Ford. You think it smells good?" "Very good." "Like. What flower is that?" "Let me think." "Neroli. With a bit of amber." "You have such a good nose." "It is neroli. Of course. I'm your cousin." Vivian laughed and reached out to pat his shoulder. That pat was very light. Like joking between friends. Or like something more intimate. A touch belonging only to one of our own. I sat beside them and watched Vivian's hand slide down from his shoulder to the table, her fingertip tapping once on the white tablecloth before she pulled it back to lift her wine glass. After that dinner ended, I paid at the front desk. The cashier said the total was $1.200. I swiped my card. When I turned back, I saw Vivian and Jason standing in the hallway talking. Her back was to me. He faced me. As he spoke, he glanced in my direction once. A smile on his lips. That glance was so brief that I was not sure whether he was actually looking at me or if his gaze had just swept by casually. When I walked over, Vivian turned her head. "Paid? Then let's go." "Jason, where do you live? Have your brother-in-law take you?" No. I can get a cab." "Don't be polite. Your brother-in-law's car is big enough." "Then. Sorry to trouble you." "Brother-in-law." I looked at Vivian. Her expression was natural, even carrying a hint of urging me to hurry up and say yes. I took out my car keys. "Let's go." Underground garage. The drive took 20 minutes. Jason sat in the back. Vivian sat in the passenger seat. She kept chatting with him, the company's current state, the progress of recent projects, the strategic transformation she wanted to pursue. Jason responded from the back with soft mms, occasionally adding a sentence or two, each one perfectly timed to show he was listening seriously and truly had some unique insight. I did not speak much. When we stopped at a red light, I glanced at Jason in the rearview mirror. He was turned toward the window, his side profile clean and sharp. the corner of his mouth slightly raised as if he were smiling at something. The light turned green. I pressed the gas. Later, I gradually discovered that the identity of cousin was used more and more broadly inside the company. On the first day, he was my cousin. A month later, he became Jason. 3 months later, people began calling him Mr. Vale. Half a year later, the young receptionist stood up every time she saw him and smiled. Good morning. Consultant Vale. Consultant. Specially appointed consultant. Annual pay, 1 million. No time clock. No KPIs. His daily work consisted of accompanying Vivian to all kinds of events, industry forums, client dinners, investor roadshows. He blocked drinks for her, blocked interviews for her, and helped her handle relationships she was too tired to handle. He did it very well. Flawlessly. He remembered every client's surname and preferences. He remembered who could not eat spicy food and who was allergic to seafood at every dinner. He could speak to everyone in a way that felt sincere and non-aggressive. Only with me did he maintain a detached politeness. When we met at the company, he would call me brother-in-law at a volume neither too loud nor too soft. Just enough for people around us to hear. In private settings. For example, when he occasionally came to our home for dinner on weekends and Vivian personally cooked a few dishes, he would chat with me a little, asking what projects I was working on recently and whether there was anything I could explain to him. I answered briefly. He listened patiently. After listening, he said, "I've learned a lot." Then he turned to Vivian and said, "Viv, with your husband's level, keeping him at our company is truly underusing him." Vivian smiled and said, "You only just realized." Her tone when saying that was light, as if it were a harmless joke. I did not know whether Jason really knew, or whether Vivian really knew, what I did at the company every day. Those 31 core clients in marketing were each won by me through time and effort. I stayed up late writing proposals. I waited in client conference rooms until 9 at night just to meet the person in charge for 5 minutes. I had drunk countless glasses of liquor on behalf of the company. But in Lane Group's narrative, those things were reduced to the business miles handles. A quiet, error-free segment that could be categorized as support operations. Jason did not need to know the details. He only needed to know that inside that business, there was money, resources, and room for him to gain experience. That night after the dinner, Vivian changed clothes in the bedroom while I leaned against the headboard reading. She changed into a silk nightgown and sat at the vanity to remove her makeup. Through the mirror, she looked at me. "Miles. About Jason. You don't mind, right?" I lowered my book slightly. Her gaze met mine through the mirror. "Mind what?" "That Jason and I are close. Don't overthink it. He's my cousin. We grew up together. It's normal that we're close. He's your uncle's son." "I know. That's good." She applied night cream in the mirror, circling her fingers around her eyes. "I was just afraid you'd overthink it. You know people at the company love gossip. Don't believe them." You don't need to feel pressured either. After Jason came, you can still manage your own part. He won't interfere with your work." After applying the cream, she stood, came to the bed, lifted the blanket, and lay down. The bedside lamp fell across her shoulder. Her skin was very pale. The strap of the silk nightgown slipped down slightly. I closed the book and turned off the light. In the darkness, she turned over and gave me her back. After about 10 minutes, her breathing evened out, and I thought she had fallen asleep. Then I heard her speak. Her voice was very soft, like sleep talking, or a murmur between sleep and waking. "Jason, come with me to that meeting tomorrow." She called his name. Then she turned over again, facing me, and her breathing sank back down. I lay awake in the darkness for a long time. A patch of streetlight filtered through the gap in the curtains onto the ceiling, like an upside-down eye. I picked up my phone and looked. 1:20 a.m. There was an unread message on WhatsApp from Jason. Sent at 1:18. "Brother-in-law. Thank you for driving me today. Viv can be blunt sometimes. Don't take it to heart. I came back only to help share some of her burden. Nothing else." I stared at that message for about 30 seconds. Then I typed 2 words. "No problem," and put down the phone. He messaged me at 1:18. That meant he was not asleep either. And the reason he messaged me was because he knew, or guessed, that I would not be able to sleep tonight. I suddenly felt that this man, 5 years younger than me, very likely understood what Vivian was thinking better than Vivian herself did. And the way he understood her was something I could not do. Sitting beside her, listening to her speak, catching every seemingly casual emotional leak. I could not do that. I was used to leaving words in my heart to cool slowly. Vivian was used to throwing words out for the nearest person to catch. Jason could catch them. He might not truly digest them, but he caught them quickly and steadily, like a trained receiver. I closed my eyes. Outside the window, the streetlight remained on behind the curtains. The next morning, when I arrived at the company, Vivian's office door was open. Jason sat in the chair across from her, with a pile of documents spread between them. He held 2 cups of coffee and pushed one toward Vivian. "Viv, you said yesterday you weren't sleeping well. So I had downstairs switched this to decaf. You're very thoughtful." Vivian took it and sipped. I walked past the door without stopping. Someone in the office saw me and lowered their head, pretending to be busy. When I passed the break room, I heard people talking inside. Probably something like, "Did you see Consultant Vale's coffee?" And that kind of emotional intelligence. We couldn't learn it in a lifetime. I entered my office and closed the door. On my desk were 3 new market research reports and a supply chain optimization plan. I sat and opened the first page. That was the position I knew best. Outside the crowd. At the corner of conference rooms. On the edge of lively whirlpools. Quietly doing my own work. Only gradually, I discovered that whirlpool was spinning larger and closer. It began swallowing things around me one by one. First, my meetings. Vivian began asking Jason to sit in. Then my projects. Jason began participating as a coordinating department. Then, at the year-end performance review, Jason turned marketing's entire year of business growth data into a PowerPoint and stood on stage saying, "Thanks to Mr. Morgan for laying the groundwork. I made some optimizations on top of his foundation." People applauded. Vivian sat in the first row, smiling as she watched him. I sat in the 5th row, expressionless. That evening after work, while changing shoes at the entryway, Vivian said, "Miles, you saw Jason's presentation today, right? Wasn't it outstanding?" See, I told you he could help after joining. He can take on more of your business in the future. You'll be able to relax a little." "Relax a little?" "Yes. You've been staying up late so much recently. You've gotten thinner." After saying that, she went into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator for water. I stood unmoving in the entryway, looking at her back. Relax a little. Slowly handing over marketing's management rights. Gradually transferring client relationships to Jason. Moving me completely out of the position of Vivian Lane's husband. Into an even less noticeable, more easily ignored corner. That was what she meant by relax. That night, I went into the study, opened the blank document, and typed that sentence for the first time. "Due to personal reasons, I hereby apply to resign from the position of vice president of the company." The cursor blinked on the screen. I looked at that sentence for about 10 minutes. Then closed the document. Not yet. I persuaded myself. I can wait a little longer. But until when? Until Jason entered marketing. Until the names of those 31 clients were labeled coordinating lead, Jason Vale. Until I lost even the last trace of presence. That night, I did not sleep well. After Vivian fell asleep, I opened my phone again and saw Jason's message in the work group. "Anyone want to play badminton this weekend?" I booked a court. More than a dozen people signed up below. Vivian replied with +1. I closed the group chat and checked the calendar. There were 4 months left until year-end. 4 months was enough for me to prepare everything. I opened that Excel spreadsheet and began organizing every client contract detail. Every contract. Every clause. Every additional term. Starting that day, I officially began laying a road for myself. Old Pete. Old Pete had followed me for 6 years. His full name was Peter Quinn. He was 40 years old. His hair so thin at the top that his scalp could be seen. He always wore plaid shirts in different colors and a pair of round-framed glasses. Looking like an associate professor teaching accounting at some university. In reality, he was Lane Group's chief financial officer. He managed the company's accounts, tax planning, and cash flow allocation. Nominally, he reported directly to Vivian. A position like CFO had to be held in the boss's hands. But in reality, Old Pete was my person. Only 3 people in the company knew that. Me, Old Pete, and Old Pete's mother. His mother did not know what that meant in the workplace. She only knew that Mr. Morgan sent you a box of fruit at New Year's. You should work hard for him. It started 6 years ago. At that time, I was still in Lane Group's technical department. Old Pete had just joined the company and was only an ordinary supervisor in finance. During a year-end audit, the Big Four firm hired externally came in to check the books and found one accounts item did not match. It was not a very large number, more than $50,000. But for an auditing firm, any unmatched subject would trigger a chain of problems. Old Pete was sweating anxiously because he had handled that payment. A process oversight had caused the supplier's invoice and our finance system records to differ by one batch number. That night, Old Pete was alone in the office working overtime, flipping through vouchers. I happened to pass by and went in to take a look. He was the kind of person who, when something went wrong, would not ask for help, only lower his head and carry it himself. A little like me. I stood beside him for 10 minutes, understood the problem, then told him, go to procurement and ask for the original order for that batch. The order number ending should be 037, not 036. It was entered wrong in the system. He looked up at me. How do you know? I memorized that supplier's serial number rules. The way Old Pete looked at me then was like a man who had walked through the desert for 3 days seeing water in the distance. After that, Old Pete began actively approaching me. He slowly discovered that I did not only remember supplier serial numbers. I also remembered the company's cash flow cycle, each major client's payment preferences, and the cost structure of every key node in the supply chain. To me, those were all technology. Just like writing code. How the system ran. How the data flowed. How the logic closed. All of it was in my heart. Later, I transferred from technology to marketing. Later still, I became vice president. Old Pete also rose all the way to CFO. No matter how the organizational structure changed, the hidden line between us never broke. Every month, he copied a set of core data to my personal email. Not the public reports, but the kind of things hidden behind numbers that only someone who had truly managed money could understand. The days of accounts receivable turnover quietly lengthening meant downstream clients' payment ability was declining. The accounts payable period shortening meant suppliers were pressing for payment. And the company's cash flow was getting tight. Contracts for 3 major clients were about to expire. But there were no new meeting arrangements added to the renewal negotiation schedule. Old Pete told me these signals immediately. He knew I understood. This habit lasted 6 years. Vivian did not know. She only knew finance gave her a polished PowerPoint report every month. Beautiful charts. Smooth wording. Everything is fine. Stable and improving. Now, this 6-year-long backup intelligence system was finally going to serve its true purpose. On the 7th day after my resignation, I called Old Pete. Old Pete. Free tonight. Mr. Morgan. His voice came through low, as if there were other people in the office. I heard about your situation. I've been afraid to call. How are you? I'm okay. Come out for dinner. Just the 2 of us. Sure. Same place. The old place was a small northeastern restaurant in an alley near the company. The storefront was tiny, but the food was authentic. When we used to work overtime until midnight, Old Pete, a few people from RD, and I often went there for late-night food. Sweet and sour pork and sautéed eggplant, potatoes, and peppers were ordered every time, along with 2 bottles of beer. We talked until the owner's wife started yawning. That day, I arrived at 6:30. Old Pete was already sitting in the innermost booth against the wall. In front of him was a plate of smashed cucumbers, untouched. When he saw me, he started to stand, then sat back down. His expression was complicated, as if there were many things he wanted to say but did not know where to start. Mr. Morgan, he said in a low voice. Are you serious this time? I took off my coat and draped it over the chair. Do I look like I'm joking? No. He shook his head. Then took a craft envelope from the briefcase beside him and pushed it to the center of the table. Look at this first. I opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of printed pages, densely filled with tables and numbers. I scanned 2 pages. They were the Class A client transaction details old Pete had compiled over the years. Not the public finance version, but the real version, with specific contacts, communication records, price history, and room for concessions. I flipped through several pages and looked up at him. It's fine. Old Pete picked up his teacup and took a sip. I told you before. My position is shaky. Jason Vale has asked for my reports 3 times already. What did you give him? Surface level stuff. Old Pete set down the cup, the corner of his mouth pulling once. Revenue. Profit. Expense ratio. Very pretty. What does he understand? He can't even distinguish cash flow from profit. And Vivian. Old Pete fell silent. His expression changed. Mr. Morgan. I'll be honest. If Ms. Lane personally checks the accounts, I can't hold it off. She is, after all, the boss. She won't personally check. Old Pete froze. How do you know? The report deck you give her every month. She has never even finished the first page. Her pour-over coffee matters more than your reports. You've been CFO for 6 years. In which year did she ever hold an annual budget meeting with you at the beginning of the year? Old Pete said nothing. He lowered his head and looked at the cup. A pale lip mark was left on the rim from when he drank. After a while, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. To be honest, Mr. Morgan, sometimes I find it strange too. She clearly sits in that position, but she seems to know nothing about the things truly operating inside the company. She knows sales numbers and profit numbers, but she doesn't know where those numbers come from. How can a boss? Because you've always been there filling in the reports. And I've always been there managing the clients. I said. We made everything run too smoothly. So smoothly that she thought the world was supposed to operate that way. Old Pete let out a long sigh. Then now that you've left this mess, I mean, those clients, what are you going to do? I'm taking a batch with me. I said. Every one that can be taken. With this detail sheet you gave me, I'll confirm them one by one. One by one. How much time will that take? There are more than 30 of them. I have nothing but time now. Old Pete looked at me for a while, then lifted his beer glass. The owner's wife had placed 2 bottles of snow beer on the table without us noticing. He clinked my glass. Mr. Morgan, are you confident? Those clients are all under framework agreements with Lane Group. I signed the framework agreements. I said. I also added the additional clauses. There's one clause in the contract. Change of service team allows renegotiation and termination. That service team refers to me. Now that I've left, they have the right to reassess the cooperation. Holy shit. Old Pete slammed his glass down, spilling a little beer. You did that 3 years ago. 3 years ago. I wasn't sure if I would use it. Now I'm using it. Old Pete stared at my face for a long time. Then slowly, word by word, he said, Mr. Morgan, you usually sit there like a wooden block. But in your heart, you've always kept an account book. I'm from technology. I said. Tech people believe in 2 things. First, a system can have bugs, but you must know where the bugs are. Second, always keep a version you can roll back to. He understood. He lifted his glass and clinked mine. Fine. I'll send you the complete transaction details through my personal email, including every price negotiation bottom line, decision maker on the client side, decision cycle, competitor quote, every safeguard you had me keep. Not a single one is missing. Thank you. Don't thank me. Old Pete drank more beer, and his voice dropped. Mr. Morgan, I also need to ask you for something. Say it. Jason Vale has his eye on my area now. He's asked for reports 3 times in a row, saying it's for strategic planning data research. I can fool him for a while, but sooner or later, it'll be exposed. If you move too slowly, my position, it won't be slow. I interrupted him. I started making calls the day I resigned. 5 have already signed intent. Old Pete opened his mouth. as if he wanted to exclaim, then swallowed it back. In the end, he only said, "That efficiency is forced out of you." I said, "I only have half a month." Old Pete fell silent. He slowly finished the beer in his glass, set it down, and reached a hand toward me. "Mr. Morgan, if you need finance on your side later, keep that side stable first." I said, "When my new company is registered and I need you, I'll come find you. You don't owe me. You helped me for 6 years. Now I owe you a meal." "Damn." Old Pete laughed, deep lines creasing the corners of his eyes. "Mr. Morgan, saying that makes us strangers. We're comrades." The owner's wife brought out the sweet and sour pork, golden and crispy, steaming hot. I picked up a piece and put it into my mouth. The sweet and sour sauce burst on my tongue, just like it had years ago. That night, we talked until almost 11. Old Pete left the craft envelope with me and said, "Take it back and read slowly. No need to return it." I tucked it into the inside pocket of my coat and patted it. It was heavy, the lifelines of more than 30 clients. When we walked out of the restaurant, the night wind was chilly. There were few people in the alley, and the streetlights stretched our shadows long. Old Pete stood at the door and lit a cigarette, exhaling smoke. "Mr. Morgan, there's something I don't know if I should say." "Say it." "On Ms. Lane's side, I've heard some things. Her state lately seems not very good. She works overtime very late every day. Sometimes she stays alone in her office without turning on the lights." Are you really not planning to talk to her?" I stood there for a while. In the distance, cars passed on the overpass, humming like a giant bee vibrating its wings beside the city's ear. She approved my resignation in 8 minutes. I said, if she wanted to talk to me, 8 minutes was enough for her to make one call. She didn't. Old Pete put out his cigarette and sighed. "All right. I understand. Be careful on the way." I turned and walked away. After more than 20 steps, I heard him shout behind me, "Mr. Morgan, next time the sweet and sour pork is on me." I did not look back. I waved. When I returned home, my own small apartment, it was almost midnight. I turned on the desk lamp, opened the envelope, and laid those 30-some pages across the coffee table in a row. Each page represented one client. After each client name were dense notes, who the decision-maker was, what their temperament was like, whether they cared more about price or delivery date, where the bottom line had been in the previous negotiation, what conditions competitors had offered. I read them one by one until 3 in the morning. Then the next morning, I started from the first sheet and made calls one by one. 7 days, 27 calls, 12 in-person meetings, 5 letters of intent signed. Money was shrinking little by little, but the check marks on my list were increasing little by little. Mr. Baker's order, 600,000, was the first. Then Mr. Lewis, 350,000. Mr. Walker's side was slower because his wife had just given birth, and his mind had not been on business lately. But in the second week, he still called me back. "Mr. Morgan, I trust you. Send me your proposal." Every call I made, I knew clearly, I was pulling bricks one by one out of the foundation of Lane Group's building. One brick, then another. For now, the floors above showed no change, but the cracks would burst open at the same moment someday. And those 31 pages were the crack map I had drawn in advance. Cracks. On the 12th day, Lane Group finally reacted. Slower than I expected. Originally, I thought marketing would notice something wrong in the first week. After all, clients beginning not to answer calls, not to reply to emails, and clearly delaying renewal negotiations. These signals should have sounded as sharp as alarms to any slightly sensitive marketing person. But marketing made no movement. Or rather, someone had noticed, but did not know how to handle it. After Jason Vale became general manager of strategic development, marketing was nominally placed under his control. But he was busy adapting to his new identity. Busy making his presence felt in meetings across departments. Busy making sure the entire company knew Mr. Vale has arrived. He had no time to care about those specific, trivial business details that required truly sitting down and analyzing data. Until the 12th day. That morning, Lane Group's client service system triggered an alert. The annual renewal negotiations for 5 Class A clients had all entered stalled status. The client managers responsible wrote 4 words in the system notes. Unable to contact. This alert did not go through the marketing director. It was pushed directly into Strategic Development's office system. Because Jason Vale had required all Class A client movements must be synchronized directly to me. When Jason saw the alert, he was in the middle of the marketing morning meeting. According to someone present that day, he had been presenting a PowerPoint about company-wide marketing awareness. He had just reached slide 3 when his phone vibrated. He looked down. Then the motion of changing slides stopped. He went quiet for about 5 seconds. He put down the laser pointer, lifted his phone, and his voice was a little dry. Who in marketing is currently responsible for Andar Electronics? There was silence below. Andar Electronics. Class A client. $6 million in revenue last year. Who is the contact? After a while, a young female account manager in the front row raised her hand. Mr. Vale. It's me. But previously, Mr. Morgan handled them directly. I only managed daily orders and after-sales follow-up. Major client business negotiations and contract renewals were all handled personally by Mr. Morgan. Then after Mr. Morgan left, who took over his work? Silence again. The marketing director lowered his head and stared at the table. The RD representative looked out the window. The deputy sales director spun his pen. It completed 1 circle. Then dropped with a click. Jason's face changed. He picked up his phone and made a call. According to the person beside him, his first sentence was, "Hello. Is this Mr. Baker? I'm Jason Vale, General Manager of Strategic Development at Lane Group." Then the other side seemed to say something. His smile stiffened. He continued. "Yes. Mr. Morgan resigned for personal reasons. From now on, your business will be handled by me." Before he finished, the call was disconnected. Jason stood in front of the projection screen with his phone raised. Behind him was slide 3 of his PowerPoint. In large font, it read, "Building deep client stickiness. Keep calling," he said to the female account manager. "Call every Class A client and find out exactly what they mean." The whole morning of calls ended with summarized feedback on his desk. Of the 31 Class A clients, 27 said they were considering adjustments to cooperation models. 3 directly said, "We're waiting for Miles Morgan's message." And 1, Mr. Baker, had already formally notified legal that the procurement contract for next quarter would not be renewed. Jason erupted in the management group chat. I saw the screenshot. It was a long paragraph tagging the marketing director. What is going on with these clients? Why was there no warning before? Did Miles Morgan not hand over when he left? What exactly does your marketing department do? Send me the complete list before end of day. No one replied. After more than 10 minutes, the marketing director replied, "Mr. Vale, Mr. Morgan did not complete formal client handover when he resigned. He said it was for personal reasons. And HR simplified the process." Jason replied with 1 word. "Chase." Another silence followed. No one asked Chase what or how to chase. Everyone knew Jason meant go bring Miles Morgan back. But he could not say those words. Because saying bring him back meant admitting he could not handle this mess. And everyone at Lane Group knew Jason could not handle it. On his first day, Vivian had introduced him as an expert in strategy and markets. But he had never truly operated an entire client lifecycle. At his former consulting firm, what he did was sit in a cubicle and make PowerPoints from second-hand data provided by client companies. Then collect hundreds of thousands in project fees and leave. From beginning to end. He had never seen what real clients looked like. He had never argued contract terms with a procurement director in a conference room. He had never drunk until vomiting at a dinner table just to win 3% in discount space. Only Miles Morgan had done these things. And Miles Morgan was gone. That afternoon, Vivian called Old Pete. When Old Pete later told me about it, the call had already ended for an hour. "Mr. Morgan. Ms. Lane called me at 3 this afternoon. What did she say?" She asked about the client deposits. In the finance system, that $20 million core client deposit pool had 7 performance deposits withdrawn today. The system triggered an alert. And she saw it. "What did you say?" I said Mr. Morgan had set up a backup agreement back then. If the service team underwent a major change, clients had the right to request deposit redemption within 15 business days. She asked, "What backup agreement?" I said, "Section 23. Clause 3 of the additional contract terms." And then, she was silent for 1 minute. I could hear her flipping documents through the phone, probably checking the contract drafts. Then she asked me, "Who added this clause?" I said, "Mr. Morgan did. 3 years ago." She said, "3 years ago." Just those 3 words. Then she hung up. After old Pete finished reporting, he added, "Mr. Morgan." Ms. Lane's voice didn't sound right. How not right? Just her usual energy. You know. Decisive. No room for argument. Today, she spoke very slowly, word by word, like she was digesting something else while asking me, "Is your side safe?" "Safe," I said. 10 letters of intent signed. 4 formal contracts running. Not much money, but enough to last 3 months. Old Pete inhaled sharply over the phone. 10 companies. In barely 2 weeks. "Mr. Morgan. You're a fucking monster." "Thank you. I wasn't praising you." "Forget it." I was. "Keep working." After hanging up, I sat on the old sofa. Outside the window was the gray-blue evening sky beyond the northern edge of the city. The 10-client list lay quietly in my phone notes, each marked with amount and signing date. From 0 to 10 clients. From 0 to more than 3 million in expected annual revenue. If everything went smoothly, I could push that number to 20 million before year-end. And in Lane Group's accounts, 7 deposits were gone. 27 renewal intentions were gone. And the vice president named Miles Morgan, who had managed client relationships for 3 years, was gone. The cracks had already appeared. What remained was only when they would split open completely. Vivian's call. On the 14th day, Vivian finally called. At that time, I had just left Mr. Baker's company, holding the signed formal contract. The $600,000 advance payment had already been sent to the new account. The sunlight was good. I stood by the road waiting for a car when my phone vibrated. The screen showed 2 words. Vivian Lane. I looked at it for 3 seconds. Then answered. "Miles." Her voice sounded tired. It no longer carried her usual clean sharpness. It was like she had just stayed up all night. Or had cried and not yet recovered. I had known her for so many years and rarely heard her voice like this. Hoarse. Each word seemingly requiring great effort to speak. Where are you?" "On a business trip." "Business trip? You resigned." "What business trip?" "A business trip to discuss business." I said. "I don't have a company now. But I still have clients." She fell silent. From the other end came faint breathing and the tapping sound of fingers unconsciously hitting a desktop. "This morning, I had finance check the accounts," she said, speaking slowly, every word carefully measured. "The core client performance deposit pool in the company's accounts lost 7 entries this morning. Finance told me all 7 clients submitted redemption requests within 15 business days. The cycle is compliant. The procedures are complete. There are no loopholes." "Old Pete said you designed this process." "Yes." "When did you design it?" 3 years ago." 3 years ago. The second day after joining. She fell silent again. This silence was longer. Only her suppressed breathing came through the phone. As if something was blocking her chest and making it hard to breathe. "Miles." She finally spoke. Her voice trembled slightly. "Do you know how much revenue these clients represent for the company?" 67%. "You left and took 67% of the company's business channels." "I know. You knew and still." "Vivian." I interrupted her. My voice flat. "Did you read the resignation letter I wrote?" "I read it." "Did you read page 3? "You didn't read page 3. "Did you?" She did not answer. But the rhythm of her breathing changed over the phone, becoming rapid and disordered. As if something forgotten had suddenly been pulled out. "I wrote the reason on that page," I said. "I wrote 3 words, you weren't there." "What does that mean?" "Exactly what it says. I was in that position for 3 years. And you never asked me once if I was tired. You only knew I managed marketing, clients, and channels. But you didn't know how I managed them. You didn't know how many dinners I drank through with those people. How many nights I stayed up. You only knew that when you needed me, I could hand in results. When you didn't need me, you put me aside and let Jason Vale sit in my conference room, sign my documents, and take my clients. Jason didn't. He hasn't taken all the clients yet. But you let him enter marketing. Marketing was built by me. You gave him the title of General Manager of Strategic Development. That position should have been mine. You told everyone publicly that from now on, he was part of our family. Then what was I? She stopped speaking. Her breathing grew heavier, as if she was desperately holding something back. Miles, she said. Her voice so hoarse I almost did not recognize it. Why didn't you tell me these things before? I wrote the resignation letter. I said. I wrote it for 3 months and revised it countless times. Those 3 words on page 3. I wrote them and deleted them. Deleted them and wrote them again. In the end, I left them there. I thought if you saw those 3 words, if you even called me and asked, "What do you mean?" I would withdraw the resignation. You didn't call. You approved it in 8 minutes. I thought at the time. I thought you were just throwing a tantrum. Her voice finally broke, carrying an obvious sob. I thought you would come back in a few days. I thought you only cared about Jason's situation. I didn't expect. What didn't you expect? That I would really leave. That those clients would follow me. That I had left myself a way out 3 years ago. Vivian. There are too many things you didn't expect. You didn't expect how Jason's General Manager of Strategic Development position came about. You didn't expect how I spent every day in the company. You didn't expect what would happen after that cup of coffee was finished. That resignation was approved. And the door closed. Miles. You made the decision in 8 minutes. I said. Now you have to bear the consequences of that decision. I hung up. Only after hanging up did I realize my hand was shaking. Not because of anger. The anger had slowly drained away during the 3 months I wrote the resignation letter. It was a feeling I found hard to define. Like a stone suspended for too long had finally landed. Only to discover in the moment of impact that it was far heavier than imagined. I stood by the road, gripping my phone. Wind blew from behind me, carrying the cold dryness of early winter in this city. A car honked in the distance. Someone in the market was bargaining. The noise of life flowed past me like an uninterrupted river. I took a deep breath, placed my phone into my pocket, and walked toward the bus stop. That night, Vivian called 7 more times. I did not answer any of them. She sent 3 messages. First, Miles, come back. Let's talk face to face. Second, what conditions did you give those clients? Lane Group can offer them too. Third, only 4 words. I can't sleep. I looked at those messages and locked the screen. I did not reply. Not because I was acting out of spite, but because I had not yet figured out how to speak to her. Over 3 years of marriage, we had accumulated too many things left unsaid between us. Like a thick layer of dust. Any attempt to stir it would send choking particles into the air. I needed to stand outside the dust and wait for things on her side to settle too. On the 15th night, old Pete sent a text. Mr. Morgan. Ms. Lane came to me again this afternoon. She asked me to pull out every client's original contract draft and went through them one by one. She spent the whole afternoon reading and said nothing. When I left, she was still reading. On the 16th morning, Lane Group's name appeared in a small financial news section. The headline was not large, but inside that circle, it was enough to draw attention. Lane Group faces sudden concentrated withdrawal of core clients. Suspected link to executive resignation. I clicked in and read it. The article was vague. It probably had an inside source leaking rumors to reporters. The comments speculated about internal conflict, financial problems. And one ID said, that female CEO of Lane Group is probably going down this time. I closed the page. The cup noodles on the table had gone cold. I carried them to the window and looked at the gray sky outside. The northern edge of the city had a flat skyline. There were none of the flashy high-rises of the CBD. Only silent gray rooftops extending into the distance. I remembered the first night I moved into Vivian's large flat 3 years ago. She stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, pointing at the night view outside and telling me, "Miles, look. One day, all of this will be ours." I walked over and hugged her from behind. Her body stiffened slightly, then relaxed and leaned into my arms. Her hair carried the scent of shampoo, a light fragrance of jasmine mixed with lemon. That was the last time I felt she truly needed me. Later, that need slowly changed flavor. It became an ordinary assumption that it's nice having you here, but it would be fine without you too. She got used to someone being home every day, someone keeping her company on weekends, someone covering the bottom when the company had problems. And I got used to becoming the person who was needed but not seen. Until one day, that not being seen became too glaring. So glaring I could no longer pretend it did not exist. Day 17. I called the remaining clients one by one to confirm. 27. All signed intent. Combined with the previous 5. There were 32 companies in total. Expected annual revenue, $170 million. I drew the final checkmark in my notebook. Then I closed it and looked up at the ceiling. The old apartment's paint had peeled slightly, forming a thin crack in the corner like a dried river. $170 million. Half a month. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. Richard Lane. On the 18th day, I was eating breakfast in the hotel restaurant. 2 slices of toast, a cup of milk, and a fried egg. My phone rang. The caller ID was an unfamiliar number from this city. I answered. Miles Morgan. A middle-aged man's voice came through. Low, with a slight nasal tone. His way of speaking carried the slow confidence of someone long used to authority. I identified it after 2 seconds. Uncle. Don't call me uncle, he said. I ask one question. You answer one question. Can you make those clients come back? Richard Lane. Vivian's father. Early 60s. He had started in building materials, later transformed into real estate development. Before Vivian took over Lane Group, he had been the company's actual controller. I had met him 3 times. Once at the wedding, once at Christmas dinner, once at the first anniversary family banquet after Vivian and I got married. Across those 3 meetings, we spoke fewer than 20 sentences total. Half of them were hello and goodbye. I can't. I said. Can't. Or don't want to. Both. The other end was silent for 2 seconds. Then his voice lowered, carrying suppressed anger. Do you know what situation Lane Group is in right now? The banks have already started pulling loans. Because core clients left. Our rating was downgraded 2 levels. Your wife hasn't closed her eyes for 3 days. That kid Jason can't be reached. No one knows where he ran off to. Are you satisfied? Uncle. Those clients followed me. I didn't steal them. The contract terms are legal and compliant. Lane Group's legal department reviewed them 3 years ago. Jason Vale couldn't hold my plate. You should know that better than I do. You looked down on me 3 years ago. I said. You thought someone from technology couldn't serve as your daughter's deputy. Now that Lane Group has a problem, you call to question me. But have you ever thought about who supported the marketing line for 3 years? Who kept those clients at Lane Group? He did not speak. Through the phone came a soft click, like the lid of a lighter closing. He was lighting a cigarette. Miles. He exhaled smoke. You married into the Lane family. You know that in your heart. Back then, I let you marry my daughter because you were good at technology. Honest. And didn't cause trouble. As long as you quietly managed the technical side, nothing else needed your concern. But what did you do? You reached into marketing, reached into the clients, and left yourself a way out in the contracts. Tell me, someone from a technical background, why are you so full of schemes? Schemes aren't born. I said. They're forced out. Who forced you? What did my daughter do to mistreat you? She let you live in a big house. Let you be vice president. Gave you status in the company. What else do you want? I wanted her to treat me as her husband. Not a decoration. Not a tool. Not the person sitting beside her watching her laugh with someone else. Laugh with who? Jason Vale. The other end was silent for an instant. Then he said. Jason is her cousin. What's wrong with relatives being close? Isn't your mind too small? Uncle. If you think this is just me being petty, then we have nothing to discuss. You. Fine. I won't argue this with you. Tell me, what will it take for you to let those clients return? Money, shares, or you come back, and I'll have Jason transferred out. I can't go back, I said. She approved my resignation. The procedure is done. Then I'll withdraw it. It can't be changed. And I paused. I don't want to change it. You, uncle. I left you a path. The 3 most valuable clients at Lane Group, Mr. Baker, Mr. Lewis, and Mr. Walker. I didn't touch them. Their agreements are corporate contracts under Lane Group's main channel. I can't manipulate those. Have your daughter go talk to them. Lower her posture a little. Concede a few points on price. And they will still renew. Those 3 together produce at least $30 million in annual revenue. Enough for Lane Group to survive this round. Richard Lane fell silent again. This time, the silence lasted so long I thought he had hung up. Then he spoke. His tone changed. Low and tired. 3 clients. You left 3. Yes. Why leave them? Because she is still my wife. I never wanted her dead. I just don't want to live with her anymore. A very, very long sigh came through the phone. Like he had expelled a breath that had been trapped in his lungs for too long. Then he said, Miles, do you know? My daughter called me this morning. Crying. She never cries. In the 3 years you were married to her, I scolded her and yelled at her. And she never shed a single tear. Today she cried. I know. She cried and told me, Dad, he doesn't want me anymore. She wasn't talking about clients. Or the company. Or your contracts. She said, he doesn't want me anymore. Do you understand what that means? I leaned back in the chair and looked at the ceiling light in the hotel restaurant. The light was bright white, falling on the white tablecloth and the unfinished fried egg. Uncle. She stopped wanting me first. I hung up. The toast had gone completely cold. I left it on the plate, stood, and walked out of the restaurant. On the 19th day, Jason Vale ran. Old Pete sent me the news at 3:17 in the afternoon. Mr. Morgan. Jason ran. He didn't come to work this morning. His office computer wasn't shut down. And the coffee in his cup was still there. Admin called him. But he didn't answer. They sent messages that showed read but no reply. Ms. Lane asked her assistant to check his place. He wasn't there. Some of his things were gone. I stared at that message for a few seconds and replied. When? Probably last night. Someone saw him leave through the company's back door around midnight, pulling a suitcase. Where did he go? Ms. Lane's assistant checked his booking records. He flew to Thailand at 11 last night. No idea which country after that. I put down the phone and leaned back. Jason Vale ran. The man who circled Vivian every day, calling her Viv more intimately than anyone, was the first to jump ship before the storm arrived. I did not feel anything especially strong. Not surprise. Not gloating. Only a bit of absurdity. Vivian had hired a strategy expert for $1 million a year. And he could not withstand even 1 month of waves. That night, old Pete sent another message. Ms. Lane stayed in her office all afternoon without turning on the lights. When I passed by, the door was open a crack. She was sitting in the chair, holding a stack of papers. It looked like your resignation letter. I did not reply. That night, I sat on the old sofa. The window was not fully closed. Night wind slipped in through the gap, gently moving the curtain. My phone screen lit and darkened. Darkened and lit again. Vivian did not call. Jason had no news. Richard Lane did not contact me again. The whole world seemed to have gone quiet. I stared at the crack on the ceiling and suddenly remembered something from 3 years ago. At that time, Vivian and I had just gotten married. One night, she came home very late from overtime, and I cooked her a bowl of noodles. She sat at the dining table and ate. After one bite, she looked up at me and said, Miles, you're so good. Just 3 words. No embellishment. No thank you or I love you. Only you're so good. But the look in her eyes then was focused, soft, and carried a defenseless warmth. She finished that bowl of noodles. Even drank the soup. Then she pushed the bowl toward me, said wash it, and went upstairs to shower. Standing in the kitchen washing that bowl, I felt life would continue like that forever. She would come home from work, I would cook noodles for her. She would finish eating and say you're so good. I would wash the bowl. She would shower. Then we would sleep together. The next morning, we would each go to work. And at night, repeat it again. I washed that bowl for 3 years. Later, she rarely ate dinner at home. After Jason came, there were more dinners out. On the rare occasions she ate at home, she no longer ate noodles. Jason recommended a new Japanese takeout place. And Vivian liked it. She ordered it twice a week. Standing in the kitchen washing dishes, I felt some things were changing, but could not say what. Now I understood. What changed was not the noodles, not the bowl, not the Japanese takeout. What changed was the thing in her eyes when she said you're so good. Little by little, it transferred to someone else. I sat on the sofa for a long time. Long enough for the night wind to make the curtain rustle loudly. Only then did I stand and close the window. Then I picked up my phone and opened the new company registration page. Legal representative, Miles Morgan. Company name. I hesitated and typed 4 characters. MV Technologies. Then deleted it. Typed. Newpath Technologies. Deleted that too. In the end, I filled in nothing and closed the page. Maybe it was not time yet. She came. On the 20th day. She blocked me in the hotel lobby. I had just come downstairs, preparing to buy a bottle of water at the convenience store. As I turned the hallway corner, I saw her at once. Vivian sat on a sofa in the lobby. Camel coat. Black pants. Flats. There were a few specks of mud on her shoes. Her hair was loosely tied behind her head, with a few stray strands falling beside her face. She wore no makeup. Her face was pale to the point of transparency, and there were deep dark circles under her eyes. Beside her was a tote bag, bulging as if it held many things. She sat very straight, spine upright, but her whole person gave off the exhaustion of someone who had used too much strength. Like a string that had been pulled taut for too long. It had not yet snapped, but it was no longer tight. When she saw me, she stood. I noticed her standing movement was much slower than usual. As if her knees were weak. Miles. She called my name. Her voice was hoarse, with a heavy nasal sound. How did you find this place? I checked your flight records. When you flew to Mr. Baker's side, you used your ID number. I had someone pull the associated booking information. You had someone investigate me. Yes. She said it without defending herself. I investigated. I looked at her. She looked at me. Between us was the distance of a coffee table, with a fake plant and a stack of hotel brochures on it. Can you sit for a while? She said. I won't take too much of your time. I looked at her for a few seconds, then sat down on another single sofa. She did not sit back down. Instead, she stood in front of me, her hands hanging at her sides, as if she did not know where to place them. Jason left. She said. I know. He flew to Thailand last night. This morning, he sent me a WhatsApp message saying sorry and telling me to take care. Then I couldn't reach him anymore. The company is a complete mess now. I used my personal assets as collateral with the banks. So things are temporarily stabilized. The board is waiting for me to present a plan. My dad. He called you yesterday. Didn't he? He did. What did he say? He said you cried. She turned her face away. After a while, she turned back. Her eyes were a little red. But she did not cry. That resignation letter. She said. I read it again today. The paragraph you wrote on page 3. I didn't see it before. That morning, I was rushing to a board meeting. I got up at 7. Saw the paper on the table. Glanced at personal reasons and approved it in OA. I didn't even turn the page. I know. I turned to it today. I saw what you wrote. You never treated me as your husband. I looked into her eyes. She looked at me too. Miles. She said. Have I ever told you that when I was little? My mother often argued with my father. Every time they argued, my mother went back to her parents' home. A few days later, my father went to bring her back. And then they continued arguing. Later, my mother stopped arguing. She left and never came back. My father raised me alone. After that, he never found anyone else. I did not know why she was suddenly saying this. I did not interrupt. Since childhood, I knew arguing was useless. My mother argued for so many years and got nothing in the end. So I learned not to argue. When there was a problem, I thought the answer was to solve it immediately. Don't drag it out. Don't entangle. You wrote that resignation letter for 3 months. And I didn't notice. Because I was used to not looking at slow, drawn-out things. I was used to quick decisions. Quick execution. Quick page-turning. You came to find me today to tell me this. No. She took a deep breath. I came to tell you I was wrong. She said those 3 words. I was wrong. No prelude. No explanation. No turn to excuse herself. Just direct. Naked. Almost clumsy. I fell silent for several seconds. Wrong where? Wrong. She lowered her head and looked at the tips of her shoes. The speck of mud on her flat must have looked especially glaring in her vision. Wrong in not putting you first. When Jason came, I asked you. You don't mind. Right. You said. No problem, and I really thought there was no problem. When you placed the resignation letter on the table, I approved it after reading only the first page. I didn't ask you why. After you left and the clients followed you, I checked the contracts and discovered you had left yourself a way out 3 years ago. Only then did I realize you had known this day would come for a long time. She lifted her head. There was finally a little water in her eyes. But she blinked hard and held it back. Miles. You were always waiting for me to ask you. But I never asked. Someone passed through the lobby, pulling a suitcase. The wheels made a rumbling sound on the floor. The girl at the front desk answered a call. Her voice light as she said, "Yes, sir. We've reserved it for you." The world continued to operate normally. Only the small space around us seemed to have been paused. You came to find me today. I said. Just to apologize. No. She shook her head. I came to tell you something. What? I sold Lane Group. I froze. I proposed it at the board meeting yesterday. The process is already underway. Closing is expected next month. After the sale, I'll receive about $20 million in cash. You sold Lane Group. It doesn't belong to me. She smiled, the corner of her mouth pulling upward bitterly. Or rather, it never truly belonged to me. It was my father's company. He let me manage it for 3 years. And I was only sitting in that position for him. After you left, I realized. I thought I controlled everything. But I controlled nothing. The clients were brought in by you. The data was managed by old Pete. Strategic plans were made by various consulting firms. All I knew how to do was sign papers and hold meetings. Then what will you do after? I want to ask you a question. She interrupted me. She stepped forward and stood in front of me. Close enough that I could smell the lingering base note of perfume on her coat. Still that Tom Ford narrowly scent. Only time had worn it very faint. When you start your new company, do you need a partner? I looked at her face. I had looked at that face for 3 years. Familiar enough to outline it with my eyes closed. The curve of her brow bone. The height of her nose bridge. The slight leftward tilt at the tip of her chin. But the expression on her face at this moment was one I had almost never seen in 3 years. Open. Defenseless. Like the inside revealed after all weapons had been put down. I have money, she said. And resources. Not many left. But some. I can still work. I didn't do real business before. But I can learn. You have technology and clients. You lack money. I lack direction. We can. She stopped. As if she did not know how to continue. Can what? Try. She said. Start over. I looked at her. The lobby ceiling light fell from above, coating her slightly lifted face in soft light. There was a faint fine line at the corner of her eye that had not been there before. It had probably appeared in the past half-month. You're serious? I asked. Serious. Have you signed the separation agreement from Lane Group? I signed it yesterday afternoon. And you've thought clearly about the $20 million. That isn't a small amount. I've thought it through. She said. I also plan to sell my apartment. That will be enough for me to live on. The $20 million is for investing in you. If you don't want it, I can use another way. Vivian. You trust that I can make this work? She looked at me. Then slowly nodded. That nod was very light. But she did it very seriously. as if confirming an extremely important promise. If I didn't trust you, she said, I never would have come. The lobby was quiet for a few seconds. In the distance came the whoosh of the hotel's automatic doors opening and closing as new guests walked in. I looked at her for about 5 seconds. Then I spoke. Give me 1 week to think. She nodded. Okay. She bent to pick up the tote bag, as if preparing to leave. When she reached the revolving door, she stopped again. Her back was to me. Her voice coming from the direction of her shoulder. That. On page 3 of your resignation letter. I read the last line. Which line? I'm not waiting anymore. I was silent. Miles. She did not turn around. You don't have to wait for me. But if you decide to let me wait, I will wait. She pushed the door and walked out. The hem of the camel coat brushed the edge of the revolving door, then was swallowed by the closing arc. I stood in the lobby, still holding the bottle of water I had not paid for. The front desk called to me. Sir. Your bottled water. I put the water back, turned, and went upstairs. Back in the room. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and opened the company registration page I had closed 3 times. In the company name field, I typed 3 characters again and saved them. MV Technologies. I put down the phone and looked out the window. The early winter sky was gray, but the edge of the clouds carried a thin line of gold, like the sun was trying hard to break out from behind them. I suddenly realized something. When I wrote that paragraph on page 3 of the resignation letter, I had deleted it 5 times. The last time I added it, I told myself, if she sees this paragraph, if she even calls and asks me, I will withdraw the resignation. She never called. But she saw it. She only saw it on the 18th day. But she saw it. She came to find me. She sold the company. She said she was wrong. She let go of everything she had once clutched so tightly. Then stood before me like a clumsy newcomer and asked, Can I come with you? I picked up my phone and sent her a WhatsApp message. You're serious? She replied instantly. Serious. I typed another line. Typed and deleted. Deleted and typed again. In the end, I sent 4 words. I'll think about it. She replied with 1 word. Okay. On the 21st day, I signed the formal contracts for the final batch of intent clients. 25 companies. Annual revenue, 170 million. Including Mr. Baker's previous batch. The total was 32 companies. The foundation of my new company had already been built. The registered address was selected in an office building in the west side of the city. 7th floor. Not big. About 2,000 square feet. But enough for the early stage. I found a renovation crew. In 1 day, they divided 5 workstations, bought a printer, and installed the internet cable. At the entrance, I printed a temporary company sign on A4 paper and taped it up. MV Technologies. At 3 in the afternoon, Vivian came. She was not wearing the camel coat. She had changed into a thin white down jacket, carried a backpack, and tied her hair into a ponytail. She looked several years younger. She stood at the door and looked up at the A4 paper sign. MV, she asked. You. She turned to look at me. Her eyes reddened slightly, but the corners of her mouth curved upward. You're serious? Serious. She did not ask again. She stood in front of that A4 sign and looked at the 2 letters for a long time without speaking. Then she turned and walked into the office. Found a workstation by the window. And sat down. From her backpack, she took out a laptop, a thermos, and a stack of notebooks. All her own things. So, she patted the dust on the desk. What do I do today? I took a stack of client files from the drawer and tossed them onto her desk. Follow-up calls for 30 clients. Call half today and the other half tomorrow. I wrote the script. Page 3. She flipped through the stack. Then looked up at me. The curve of her smile grew larger, showing a bit of her teeth. Miles. On page 3 of your resignation letter, you wrote, I'm not waiting anymore. But your new company's name has my initial in it. I did not speak. Sunlight entered from the window and fell on her shoulder. Her ponytail was lit into a warm color, like a photo with saturation turned up. I watched her open the call script and pick up her phone to dial. The ringing sound echoed through the empty office. "Hello, Mr. Walker. This is Vivian Lane from MV Technologies." When she said the words MV Technologies, she paused. Not because she was stuck, but as if tasting an unfamiliar flavor. Then she continued, her voice steady and clear, completely different from how she had spoken in boardrooms before. I walked back to my own workstation and pulled out the chair. Beside my keyboard was a glass of water. I did not know when she had poured it. It sat beside my mouse. Warm. I looked at that glass of water. Then at her. She was tilting her head, listening to the call, spinning a pen in her fingers, the barrel turning again and again. 3 years ago, when she brought me into that large flat, she said, "One day, all of this will be ours." Today, she sat in this 2,000 square foot new office, the walls still covered with renovation protection film, and told a client over the phone, "We are a new company, but our team is old." Old. Meaning some things had not changed from 3 years ago to now. Like the way she spun a pen. Like my habit of drinking water. Like the wedding ring I had left deep in a drawer. I did not wear it on my hand. But I had not thrown it away either. I had left it in the bedside cabinet of Vivian's apartment. I did not know whether she had seen it. But it did not matter. It was only a ring. The important things I had taken with me. Those client lists. Those technical plans. The confidence I had accumulated through 3 years of late nights. Enough to let me start over. And the woman now sitting by the window, clumsily explaining to clients that although we had just started, Miles Morgan is still Miles Morgan. I waited for her for a long time. She finally waited her way back too. The resignation letter approved in 8 minutes took me 21 days to settle afterward. But during those 21 days, with the moment she sold the company, lowered herself, stood in the hotel lobby, and said I was wrong. She made up everything. Time is not fair. It lets some people walk farther and farther away. It also lets some people circle all the way around and return to the same intersection. I typed the first line of the work plan on my computer. MV Technologies. Phase 1 goal: complete the business migration of all 32 clients within 3 months, launch second round financing within 6 months. The cursor blinked at the end of the document. Wind blew outside the window, lifting one corner of the A4 company sign and letting it fall back again. The sunlight was just right. All right. That's all for today's story. Please remember to subscribe and leave a comment.